July 29th, 1973, young 25-year-old British driver Roger Williamson, racing for the March engineering team, was driving a March 731 in the Dutch Grand Prix at the Zandvoort circuit, known for its fast corners and sand barriers. On lap 8, traveling at approximately 140 miles per hour, 225 kilometers per hour, Williamson lost control due to chassis damage. The uncontrollable car crashed into the barriers, which were dug into the sand. The car's fuel tank was damaged, and the car was thrown back onto the track, flipped over, and burst into flames. Williamson was not seriously injured in the crash, but found himself trapped in his upturned, burning car. Another British driver, David Purley, stopped his car and rushed to Roger's aid, but David was unable to turn the burning car over on his own. Several marshals soon ran to the burning car, but none of them had a fire extinguisher, nor were they wearing fireproof clothing. Another marshal, holding the coveted fire extinguisher, slowly approached the scene. The canister lasted only 15 seconds, clearly not enough to extinguish the flames. The other drivers could have saved the driver if they had stopped and helped Purley flip the car, but they mistook David, running around the car, for the driver of the damaged car. One of the marshals pulled Purley away from Williamson's burning car, and a few minutes later a fire engine arrived at the scene, but it was too late. Williamson had suffocated in the smoke and died at the scene. The death of Roger Williamson was a shock. Following this tragedy, the FYA revised its fire safety system and introduced mandatory mobile rescue teams at every track and required all drivers to wear fire-resistant suits. March 5th, 1977. Tom Price, a 27-year-old Welsh driver, raced for the Shadow team. Tom was driving the Shadow DN8 at the South African Grand Prix. On lap 22, Price's Shadow was traveling down the straight at approximately 170 miles per hour, 270 kilometers per hour. The car of his teammate, Renzo Zorzi, caught fire ahead. Two track marshals ran across the track with fire extinguishers to help put out the blaze, but one of them, Freddie Van Vuren, misjudged his speed. Price, racing at full speed, had no time to notice or avoid the fire. His car collided directly with the marshal. The firefighter was thrown several meters, and the 40-pound, 18-kilogram fire extinguisher dropped from his hands and struck Tom on the head. The force of the impact was such that the extinguisher bounced upward, flew over the stands, and struck a parked car in the parking lot. The impact violently ripped the driver's helmet upward, partially decapitating Tom with his seatbelt. His death was instantaneous. The uncontrollable car continued down the straight, crashed into Jacques Lafitte's car, and then into the barrier. This tragedy went down in Formula One history as one of the most absurd and accidental deaths. Following the incident, the FIA changed the rules for track marshals. They could now only enter the track by radio signal and under the full supervision of the race director. April 30th, 1994. Qualifying for the San Marino Grand Prix was taking place at the Imola circuit in Italy. Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger, 33, was driving for the fledgling Simtech team in a Simtech S941. During the qualifying session, Ratzenberger entered the track with a damaged front wing. It had been damaged a lap earlier after hitting a curb. At 195 miles per hour, 314 kilometers per hour, the part finally broke off and lodged itself under the car, depriving it of downforce. The car lost contact with the asphalt and practically flew straight toward the concrete wall of the Villeneuve corner. The impact was colossal. The acceleration exceeded 500 G. The impact struck the front of the cockpit, cracking the driver's helmet. Roland suffered a basilar skull fracture and a ruptured aorta, injuries incompatible with life. The medical team arrived immediately but could only pronounce him dead. Ratzenberger's death was the first fatality of a Formula One driver in 12 years, since the tragedy of Riccardo Paletti in 1982. But the weekend wasn't over. The following day on the same track, Ayrton Senna died. October 6, 1974, Watkins Glen Raceway in New York State. 25-year-old Austrian Helmut Koinigg was racing for the Surtees team, piloting a Surtees TS16. He was one of the championship's rookies, a composed, technical driver who was expected to have a long career. On lap 9 of the race, Koinigg entered a high-speed corner. Exiting the corner, his car lost traction and crashed into the barrier. At that time, the track was surrounded by 2 layers of Armco-type steel barriers. But there was a gap between the panels. It was this gap that caught the nose of the car. The car dived under the lower section of the barrier, and the upper edge of the metal tape penetrated directly into the cockpit. The impact struck the driver's head, and death occurred instantly. Decapitation. The race was not stopped due to the tragic accident. According to some reports, the car containing the driver's body was simply covered with a tarpaulin until the end of the race. After an investigation, the FIA deemed the track design dangerous. As early as the following season, Formula One began actively implementing multi-layer barriers with small gaps, and cockpits became deeper and more robust. To June 3, 1958, the legendary Nurburgring Nordschleife circuit hosted the 1,000 kilometers of the Nurburgring, one of the most difficult and grueling races of its time. German racing driver Erwin Bauer, 32, piloted a Ferrari 250 TR. Bauer was considered a disciplined and reliable driver, competing in Grand Prix and sports car classes. After almost 7 hours of racing, Bauer's crew completed the distance. As he crossed the finish line, the flagship was already waving the checkered flag, but the driver, tired and focused, didn't notice the signal. He continued driving at full speed, believing he had another lap ahead. Bauer was driving at full speed and collided with a car that was already slowing. The impact sent him off the road and into some trees. The driver died from his injuries 2 days after the accident. The irony of the tragedy was that the race was already over. Erwin Bauer became one of the few in motorsport history to die after crossing the finish line. May 12, 1957. Spanish aristocrat, pilot, and playboy Alfonso de Portago, 28, was competing in the famous Italian Mille Miglia race, 1,000 miles across the open roads of Italy. De Portago was driving a Ferrari 335S, one of the most powerful cars of the time, of V12, 390 horsepower, and a top speed of over 240 kilometers per hour, 150 miles per hour. His co-driver was Edmund Nelson. At the final pit stop in Mantova, De Portago stopped for a quick pit stop, fuel and tire checks. His companion, American actress and model Linda Christian, was among the spectators. Just before entering the final stretch, she leaned toward him and kissed him on the lips. A photographer instantly captured the moment, a shot that went down in history as the kiss of death. It was the last photo of Alfonso alive. A few dozen kilometers later, near the village of Guidiso, the Ferrari's front tire blew at a speed of approximately 200 kilometers per hour. The car lost control, crashed into a concrete pole, flew upward, and spinning in mid-air, destroyed a utility pole, along with a crowd of spectators standing along the track. De Portago and Nelson were killed instantly, presumably during the initial impact. 10 spectators, including 5 children, died with them. De Portago's body was ejected from the cockpit and torn in two. This disaster shocked Italy. Newspapers published photos of the Ferrari's wreckage and lists of the dead. The Mille Miglia was immediately banned, and the Italian government initiated a complete overhaul of street racing safety regulations. Each of these tragedies was not just a loss, but a lesson. Today, racing drivers are alive thanks to those who paid for progress with their lives. Mort was with you. Like and subscribe to the channel.